Hi everybody, I'm just doing a quick introduction here to drawing people, which we're going to look at again in the live session on Thursday, but I thought it might be useful to go over a couple of things first. The first thing I want to talk about is this, which is something you'll see when you look up a lot of tutorials on how to draw the human figure. And the suggestion is that if you draw a head, you start with a head, then you make that distance come 8 times. That will give you a good proportion for the human body. And you can see that there are various points where the body parts cross the lines, like the top of the legs are halfway along, and the knees are round about this 6 mark. And it's quite useful, but it's only as a very, very basic starting point. And the reason is that this sort of proportion is going to give you the build of somebody who's like a supermodel. And not only that, but they're standing straight, they're looking forward, and the position of the body is very square. Likewise, you get this with the face. You get told that if you draw an oval and then you divide it in half, that's where you'll find the eyes. Now, I think that this is actually a very useful measure, this halfway for the eyes, because until you start looking, you don't really notice how much of the head is taken up by hair. And it's very good to get into the practice of just locating the eyes down, halfway down. And a lot of tutorials will tell you then you divide that half in half again, where you'll get the nose, and then you divide that in half again for the mouth. Well, the thing is that when you draw a face using this system, it's always the same face. And we all know that our faces vary a great deal more than that. But as I say, do get into the habit of realising that the eyes are halfway down the head. But when it comes to drawing figures, as with anything else, the real trick is to look. So today, for example, I was in a queue outside Infinity Foods, and I was thinking about the people in front of me. Now, I don't need to think about whether this lady's head goes 8 times into her body. I just need to look at how she is. I need to look at what's in front of me and to draw that. So if I zoom in a little and start up with the head and the shoulders, I'm going to be looking at her in exactly the same way I'd be looking at anything else, a plant, a still life, anything. And before I start drawing, I'm going to start mapping out a few things. So for example, I'm going to look at this line here, like the arms and the shoulders. There's quite a curve there, and her head is sitting slightly off centre, and that's because she's looking forward and her neck has dropped forward and her head is turned. So, you know, that very balanced sort of head in the middle and 8 figures, eight multiples is already no good to me. So what I'm going to do is, before I start, I'm going to keep having a little look here. I'm going to notice that, as I say. I'm going to see that this shoulder, there's less space here than on the other side. And again, that's because she's turned away. So I'm going to start drawing her head. I'll do it more or less the same size. And another thing I would like to point out is the line of her face here. So it's literally, I'm just looking at what's in front of me. And from that's really the best way to start learning how to draw the human body. So you can see there's a little line that goes up there, again because her neck is forward. We can only see the back of her ear, so a little line will suffice for that. She's got her hairline coming down on this ponytail, and I'm just coming down onto this other shoulder, which is wider. And again, I'm noticing that angle as it goes down. So I don't know if you watched the little film I made about drawing the cans, but I was talking about looking at angles and how sharp lines are. And there's a very smooth curve that goes all the way around to her elbow. So I'm just going to try and follow that. My drawing's a little bit bigger, so it'll come down a bit further. And again, I can use that measurement either from the top of the head to the shoulder or from the top of the ponytail, and I can, just in my mind, I can drop that in to find out how long I think the arm is. So from the shoulder to there, it's a bit longer. So if I imagine that, I'm going to drop it down, and then that gives me a clue that this shoulder, this elbow, comes in here. And this arm, the angle is slightly outwards, and then there's an angle inwards here. And I'm not thinking this is an elbow. What does an elbow look like? I'm just thinking, where does this line go? So in exactly the same way as if I was drawing a still life of objects arranged on a table, I'm just breaking down this figure into different components. So like, I know that there's an armpit there, but I can't actually see it, so I don't draw it. I just draw this line of the dress, and then it tucks in and goes out to the hip. So and you know, I can do exactly the same. I'm starting to just do a bit of approximate shading. It's a bit tricky with this. I'm not very familiar with this setting, so I don't know how dark it's going to get, but I'm noticing that there's a lot of shadow tucked where the arm meets the body. I'll just copy that. So you can see that there's no mystery to drawing a human figure. A human figure, just as if it was a pile of books or a cup of tea with an orange. It's a series of lines and angles, and all we have to do, so for example, I'm noticing now there's a shadow here, and I don't need to know that that shadow's there before I start. I didn't know. I just need to observe it when it's in front of me. And once you start to just work from your eyes, the human figure sort of loses its mystery. It's not a especially difficult thing to draw. It might be more complicated than a cup of tea or an orange, but it's no more difficult. You just have to, you have more lines and more angles to think about, but essentially it's exactly the same. So I'm not going to finish this whole drawing. You don't want to watch me do that. I might do it and show it to you later. But I hope you sort of get an idea of what I mean, that really the reputation for figure drawing being difficult, yes, of course it takes practice, and of course you get better with practice, but it really isn't any different to drawing anything else. And the reason I picked this picture of a lady in a queue is because we're all spending quite a lot of time in queues at the moment. And this morning I wished I'd brought my sketchbook, because it would have given me a lovely way to stand and quietly spend some time. And next time I go back to do some more queuing outside the shops, I will take my sketchbook and I'll show you what I've done.